Are arch supports, bracing, and physical therapy actually effective for inner ankle pain, also known as posterior tibial tendonitis? In this video, you're going to learn everything you need to know about posterior tibial tendonitis, what actually helps, and how to tell if you're improving. Okay, so first, what is the posterior tibial tendon? So the posterior tibial tendon starts as a muscle in the leg, and it courses behind the inside of your ankle, and it inserts, one of the insertion points is right here along the navicular bone in the inner arch area. So it's a tendon that helps us kind of almost like pull up our arch when we walk. It's more like it helps with what we call supination. You know, pronation is when you kind of roll in when you walk, and supination is kind of a little bit like when you roll out when you walk. And that tendon helps to lift up our arch. So the problem is when the actual tendon gets fatigued or stretched out. If you feel like you roll in as you walk, that tendon is actually getting more stretched out and stretched out and stretched out, and it gets weaker. So what happens is that you may notice that you feel dull and achy pain along the inner ankle or even along the inside of the foot. So that's a sign that the posterior tibial tendon is inflamed. A lot of people come to my office and say, I think I have plantar fasciitis, and they're not completely off when they think that, because it can sometimes be a little bit confusing because of the way that the symptoms present. Plantar fasciitis, you know, that's the ligament that inserts on the bottom of the heel and it fans into the toes. And so a lot of people will have arch pain with plantar fasciitis, but the thing that's different with the posterior tibial tendonitis is that the pain, if you look on the inside of the foot on the sawbone model, it's not in the bottom arch area. The pain is usually along where the tendon is on the inner arch area. So it's subtle, but a lot of times when patients come to my office, I push kind of in both areas to figure out which is causing the pain, because we treat both of them differently, right? So it's important to find out exactly what the issue is, and a lot of times it can be confusing for people, which I totally get, because like I said, it's all kind of based on anatomy and also like their symptoms, so sometimes it can be confusing for people, which is completely normal. So oftentimes, like I said, we can diagnose it clinically just by palpating and feeling exactly where the pain is. Oftentimes, if you ever go and see a foot doctor, they'll probably get an x-ray as well, because we also want to look at your foot structure to see, you know, do you have a flat foot? Do you have a high arched foot? Or when you're standing, do you roll in or pronate? Because if you're pronating a lot, that'll tell me that you're straining that tendon, and that could be contributing to this issue of that constant achy, dull feeling. You may notice that the pain gets worse the more you're on your feet. Sometimes you may have some pain in the morning, but typically because you're straining that tendon and it's stretching out and things like that throughout the day, most people will feel pain with activities, unlike plantar fasciitis, where a lot of people feel pain when they first get out of bed. So with the posterior tibial tendonitis, I always tell patients, you know, I know that when you're coming into my office and you're limping and having a ton of pain in the area, that this didn't happen overnight. A lot of times when you have posterior tibial tendonitis, it's something that's slowly happening because, like I said, remember, it's the tendon that's designed to kind of hold up the arch. So it's something that usually gets strained over time. It's rare when someone just comes in and like had an injury and just tore or ruptured their tendon. It's a really strong tendon. So most of the time that I see it, it's usually because it hasn't been properly supported for many years. Now, you may notice that certain activities can kind of, you know, trigger the pain where you feel it and notice it more. Like if you've been training for like a race, or if you have switched jobs recently and you're required to be on your feet more, or you went on vacation and you were walking a lot with your grandkids and things like that. You know, if you have been doing more activity, you may notice that it's been hurting a lot more which may prompt you to go and see your foot doctor. Now, as far as treating posterior tibial tendonitis, I always get asked, well, are there stretching exercises that can help? And I get it. A lot of times, people would prefer home remedies and things like that to help take away pain. And there are stretching exercises that can help, but I always tell patients, let's solve the structural problem that's going on. We know that this tendon is getting strained based on the way you're walking. So usually we have to take load away from the tendon with an arch support or bracing. Now, I always tell patients, you've got to tell me how bad your pain is, because if for some reason you're limping into the office and your pain is like an 8 or 9 out of 10 and your ankle is swollen, I'm not just going to put you in an insert, because that's not going to take enough load away from the tendon for you to be able to get relief. The worst case scenario that I always worry about with people with posterior tibial tendonitis is, have you torn the tendon? Because sometimes what happens when the tendon gets so weak to the point where it can't carry you during your activities anymore, it will start tearing. And that's oftentimes when I see a ton of swelling. People are limping and you can't even walk into the office without screaming in pain. It's pretty obvious when someone must have a tear in their tendon. So in those cases, what I usually will recommend if the pain is severe is to stop doing excess activities, and I'll prescribe what's called a walking boot. Now, if you don't go and see a foot doctor, you can get a walking boot on Amazon. I'll attach a link in the description to the boot that I recommend, as well as my free guide on what to do to treat this condition. If you want to read the whole guide, you can, or you could just get the boot, and I'll attach the link in the description for that. It's basically a walking cast that I usually will recommend that people wear for about 3 to 4 weeks to alleviate pressure along the tendon and allow it to rest. And usually that will get down the inflammation. And if you have little micro tears, it allows for that tendon to heal itself. After that point, as long as you're not too swollen, what I'll do is I'll prescribe an ankle brace. Now, I'm real picky with ankle braces and inserts. Anyone who knows me knows that I don't just recommend anything. I like the Game Day ankle brace. It's very supportive and it stabilizes the ankle in the proper way. Now, if you can't see your doctor and get a prescription for a good ankle brace, again, you can get an ankle brace on Amazon. Z Athletics actually has a pretty good one that's very similar to the Game Day ankle brace that supports the ankle and the foot so that you're not rolling that ankle and straining the tendon even more. So usually I'll have patients wear the brace for a good 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of people love the brace, and even when I tell them you can stop wearing it, especially when your pain is getting better, they just feel better and their ankle just feels more stable wearing it. So there's no problem with wearing it for several weeks or when you're going to be walking or on uneven terrain and things like that. If you want to wear the brace, you can continue to do that. Now, say for instance, you just have a little bit of dull and achy pain and you just notice it more when you're at work or on your feet more, then I always just go straight to inserts. The thing is that the only way to take load off that tendon is to get an arch support so that you don't constantly strain it, right? You're going to want to avoid any type of flat flip-flops. You don't want to wear ballet flats. You don't want to wear any flat shoes that makes you strain the tendon even more. I like the Power Step orthotics. They have a firm arch and they do elevate the foot. It's affordable. I'm not sponsored by them. I just like them and recommend the inserts to my patients in my office. Spanko also has good inserts as well as Vionic. You can get one of those insert brands, take the liners out of your tennis shoes and put the inserts in. And if you want to try to fit them in your other shoes, that's fine too. But a lot of these inserts are meant for tennis shoes. But elevating the arch helps significantly in taking away that pain. Now, say for instance, you kind of have a little bit of a unique foot where you've tried the Power Steps, you've tried over-the-counter inserts, and you're like, you know what? It helps, but it just doesn't feel right. Or you're required to be on your feet a ton at work and you need more support. What I'll do in those situations is I'll write a prescription for a custom orthotic. And what that is that it's an insert orthotic that's designed to fit your feet. So we do custom orthotics at our office, but if you go and see your foot doctor, they can also write a prescription to get custom orthotics if they don't do it at the office. But the thing that the orthotic has to have, other than being that it's custom made to your feet, is that it has to have something called a medial flange. A medial flange, you can think about it as like an added arch. And I love how it takes away the ability to pronate or roll in, like I talked about, that's causing the posterior tibial tendonitis. And my patients who have this, they love it. I mean, it works like a charm to prevent that rolling in motion and prevent straining the tendon. The only complaint I ever have heard about this in the last 10 years is that yes, because of the added arch, it does take up more room in the shoes. But so what? You know, if you have to buy shoes that are a little bit bigger just to accommodate the orthotics, totally worth it if it's not going to have you have pain constantly. Now, another thing that would help with posterior tibial tendonitis, like I mentioned, is the stretching exercises and physical therapy. You know, they'll work on strengthening and stretching the tendon to help relieve pain and inflammation. However, I always tell people, again, that'll help take down the pain and help improve your strength. But again, we still have to solve the problem that's going on structurally with your feet, which is why I keep pushing for the inserts, the braces, the boot, if it's really bad, to calm it down and then fix the actual way that you're walking, because that's what's going to fix the problem long term. Now, say for instance that you've tried everything and the pain just doesn't go away, the tendon's torn, you can't live your life. In those cases, what we do is something called a flat foot reconstruction surgery. A lot of times if the tendon is strained or torn, it's not as simple as just going in and repairing the tendon, because a lot of times the issue is because you're rolling in as you walk or you have flat feet. A reconstructive surgery like that needs to be done so that it doesn't keep happening. Because if you just repair the tendon without fixing the structural problem, it's just going to tear again right after it heals, right? So I always tell patients that surgery is the last resort. You know, I would say 95% of my patients don't ever even end up needing surgery. So don't worry that you have to jump to surgery, because that is a fear for a lot of people. This is a really common issue, and it's really something that can be fixed so that you can live your life again and do the things that you need to do. I put all of this information in my free guide, so comment the word guide if you want me to send you the free guide where you'll know exactly what inserts to buy, what braces to get, and also about that boot too, in case the pain is severe. It'll save you time and money, and it took quite a bit of time to put the guide together. So if you're interested in that, comment guide and I'll send it to you. See you in the next video.